Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Nonprofit Fundamentals. I'm Adam, joined alongside with April. And today we're going to talk about mergers, acquisitions, strategic partnerships, and shared services with our guest, Jennifer Aronson, who is the leader in the nonprofit practice at the law firm Hodgson Russ. So Jennifer, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Adam and April.
So let's get right into it. So can you just briefly describe the differences between what's a merger acquisition, what's a strategic partnership, and what are shared services and how they differ?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're in the nonprofit context, it's a little bit different than in the for-profit context. So when you traditionally think about a merger, you're thinking about two organizations that are coming together and either forming a brand new entity or one of them is going to be the survivor organization and the other one is kind of going to, all of their operations are going to get swooped up and merged into the surviving organization, one of the other entities. So that would be a true legal merger. There's typically a merger agreement in place that says, here's the types of things that your team is going to do, our team is going to do, discusses transition of services and things like that. Typically, a merger is done with organizations that have a long-standing history of working together. Perhaps one is financially, for some reason or another, needs to merge with the other. And most times it is financial reasons. Maybe they don't have enough resources to fulfill all of their charitable activities and their charitable purposes that they want to do. Perhaps there are resources that a similarly situated nonprofit can provide, and they do similar activities, but two heads are better than one. And so sometimes a merger is the way to go. Mm-hmm. We always hear the term acquisition, like mergers and acquisitions, and you think, oh, that's going to be buying and selling. It's really not that straightforward when it comes to nonprofits, right? When you have an acquisition in a nonprofit sense, it looks much different. In order to acquire all or substantially all of the assets of another organization, you're going to need regulatory and governmental approvals to go along with it. So you can't just transfer all of your assets over to any organization. There's a process that needs to be gone through. And in New York State, we have to go through the New York State Attorney General's office to get approval before transferring any assets, and before another nonprofit can, quote, acquire the assets of another organization. Many times when that's done, if another organization is acquiring substantially all of the assets of a nonprofit, typically the nonprofit that's selling, usually, not all times, but usually is going to end up dissolving. So it's a two-step process with the Attorney General, getting approval to first sell the assets to another 501c3, and then approval for dissolution. An alternative to this is shared services. Shared services is a great opportunity to get to know the other organization before you make any decisions about merging or transferring your assets or anything like that. It's kind of like dating before you actually get married.
Right, before you fully commit.
Yeah, testing out the waters. See if
Yeah.
you like each other. Do your employees work well together? There also may be other restrictions in place, donor restrictions on certain funds that would preclude any sort of transfer of those assets or preclude certain corporate restructuring. So a shared services agreement is a great way to say, we're going to combine some of our resources for now and test the waters. And if that works, we can do a different corporate restructuring, a larger corporate restructuring down the road.
What kind of resources do you usually see being combined in that shared service model?
Could be anything from bookkeeping to shared employee resources, mostly. It could be shared facilities.
Mm-hmm.
it runs the gamut, but most times I do see employees.
Mhm.
Okay, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Is there complications with that, sharing employees?
There can be, but the shared services agreement outlines very clearly who the employer is, the
Okay,
employer-employee relationship is, so that you don't run into any, you don't run into any issues when it comes to compensation, workers' comp, things like that.
got it. Okay. Um, so how does the whole process work when it comes to the merger acquisition? When it is, they're dating, they share a service.
Mhm.
What's the next step for them to then take the full plunge and commit?
Yes. So I think it's a couple of things, and they're all done right around the same time. It's very important to engage your legal counsel, but also engaging your um, tax advisors as well, your CPAs, because in this instance, we want to make sure that we're not only doing everything legally compliant, but that it also financially makes sense and not incurring any unintentional tax consequences because of it. So the first step is engaging your advisors. Once you do that, then your legal counsel and tax advisors can assist with putting together, let's say it's a merger. You'd put together an agreement and plan of merger. And that's really going to outline the terms of the merger. And if there are any donor restricted funds, it's also going to outline how those are going to be handled. It's going to outline what types of assets are going to be, I'm sorry, what types of responsibilities are going to be taken on by certain organizations. Is everything just going to get swallowed up into one other organization, or are you creating a new surviving organization?
Right.
So all of those things need to be taken into account. And if so, what kind of organization are you? Do you need to apply for tax exempt status and wait for the IRS to issue a determination letter? A lot of timing. But once the plan is set forth, in New York State, we submit that to the Attorney General.
Mhm.
If the nonprofits that we're working with are healthcare nonprofits or education corporations, then there's also usually an additional layer of approval, governmental approval that's needed from the education department, the Department of Health.
Right.
It could run the gamut. Typically in with housing corps as well, there are several layers of approvals that will be needed in addition to the Attorney General. So it's making sure that all of those things are approved before any of the activities and the merger actually happens.
In your experience, because I know in the past nonprofits hear mergers and they feel like it's a dirty word for
Mhm.
them. Do you feel like that's changing? Do you feel like nonprofits are becoming more open to the idea of it?
I think so. And I think because one of the reasons that I'm seeing an increase in this is because nonprofits, they're financially strapped.
Yep.
You want to make sure that, yes, the term merger sounds dirty to some, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But
My
it,
word, not yours.
right, yeah. Yeah, but as long as you are really doing your due diligence about the other organization, not only just looking at their 990s, but really meeting with the board and understanding, what their intent is and ensuring that it aligns with your intent, your board's intent, and the organization's intent. If the charitable purposes are aligned, in any, then I think that a merger is a great opportunity. It's just a way to allow access to more resources, essentially, to be able to continue to do the good work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, are there any, in your experience, any common pitfalls that you see nonprofits encounter that they should be aware of when they start going down this path?
Yes. Yes. I actually had one, well, it was two schools. They were private schools. And one of them wanted to, they had been discussing for a couple of months. I think it'd be a good idea if we merge. One of them was really financially strapped and they thought, let's merge. They didn't put anything on paper. They just picked up and moved the students and all of the teachers over to the new school. Nothing was papered. So I'm sure all of the red flags
Yeah,
that
it's
you
a huge red
imagine were
flag.
happening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then they came back to their CPA and to their attorneys and they said, oh, yeah, I think we need to paper this. Can you help us put this on paper? So we were starting to draft. Mind you, all of the students have already started in this new school, this new building. Parents, families are getting used to this new building. Teachers are getting used to being in a new environment. They're already moved in. They don't have anything in writing,
Yeah.
but they're already moved in. Turns out it didn't work out, unfortunately. And so they ended up having to move the students back out, back into the building. And they merged before the merger was papered and before all the diligence was done and before they got any approvals to do so. So I would just say to avoid all of the hiccups that came along with a situation like that, make sure that you're engaging counsel as early as possible, earlier than you think you need.
Got it. Okay. So don't run off getting eloped. You may want to take the
Exactly.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mergers and elopements. Yeah. No, don't go get eloped.
But, it's a good point that that due diligence part is really important.
Yes.
And once you're going through an agreement and, terms and what's going to, the agreement's going to look like, things could change
Mhm.
as you go through all those details.
Mhm. Right. Something that you assumed you would be on the same page about might end up being a sticking point in the deal. So that typically doesn't come up until, you're well into the due diligence process.
Right.
Mhm.
That makes sense. I mean, definitely getting everything on paper before you plunge into it is
Yeah.
definitely definitely a necessity.
Yes.
Is there any piece of advice that you would give to nonprofit leaders for considering, going down this path?
Yeah, I would just say, because not a lot of people know that there are different options out there. They typically think we can either merge or some can acquire our assets, and that's pretty much it. But there are alternative arrangements out there. So I would say, again, consulting with your advisors, because they're the ones that are going to be really up to date on what might fit you best. And also, just because something worked for other organizations doesn't mean it's a one size fits all. It's very case by case. So I would say making sure that that's yet another reason to consult with your advisors, because just because two other organizations merged, that might not be the answer
Right.
for your organization and another nonprofit.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good point because I'd imagine that there's a lot of pros and cons of each, right?
Oh,
If you
absolutely.
go the full merger route or if you decide to do the shared services first and if there's any other strategic partnerships you can have with other nonprofits,
Mhm.
all different things to consider with each of them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so how often are you seeing them now? Mergers, are you seeing them more often?
Mergers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that I'm seeing more now than ever before.
Mhm.
Especially, I think that there was a slowdown right around election time. People were kind of wait and see holding pattern. But now I think nonprofits are in a situation where they really want to be strategic. And I think that they are trying to keep up with a lot of the executive orders that are out
Yeah.
there and making sure that they're making, sound financial decisions as well. Um, Ultimately doing all activities in furtherance of their charitable purposes, of course, but making sure that they're doing so in a way that is going to allow longevity for the organization. And so we are seeing an uptick in mergers.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
guess with the government funding uncertainty, it's definitely probably spooked a lot of nonprofits who think
it
that maybe
has.
this may be the right move for the
Yeah,
mission to keep forward.
particularly in the education space. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, having to be really creative with resources when you're really tight strapped. Mhm.
Makes sense. Well, any closing thoughts before we end the video?
No, I'd just like to say thank you so much for having me, and I really look forward to working with you continuously. And if anybody wants to reach out, they can find me on the website at hodgsonruss.com. I also have a podcast. Can I give a little plug for that?
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Okay, it's called She Talks Law, and it's a podcast for women business owners, entrepreneurs, and women board chairs and leaders of nonprofits.
Love
Nice.
that.
That sounds great.
Mhm.
Great.
So thank you for having me. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you again.